Congratulations! If you just graduated college, somehow had rich parents who gave you $100,000, and wanted to live within 50 miles of Seattle, you are entitled to one of the following: A, a houseboat, or B, a shed. This is the American dream.
It is no surprise that homes in California don't come cheap.
They certainly don't. Last month, a medium single-family home cost just less than $800,000.
Finding a home for sale is getting tougher these days. Inventory is slim in part because mortgage rates are so high, and that's leaving some priced out.
Prices continue to rise in Las Vegas and around the country. Housing has also seen a significant spike in the last few years.
Since 1970, there has been a widening gap. From 1948 to 1973, productivity grew roughly 97%, and wages reflected that, growing 91%. From then, things would not be the same. From 1973 to 2013, productivity grew a staggering 74%, while wages only increased 9%. To put this in perspective on where this money is going, the change in compensation for the top 1% grew 138% from 1980 until 2013. In that same time frame, the change in compensation for the bottom 90% increased only 15%. This means our graduate who's earning $50,000 would have his income increase to $57,000 over the next 33 years, while the top 1% would have their already large salary increase from $648,725 into over $2.8 million. This leaves already wealthy people with a large supply of income that they can use to generate even more income. As more people are born and more families are raised, more houses are obviously needed. This need should be reflected in a healthy increase in housing over the period from 1970 until today. However, a little thing called 2008 happened. 2008 saw a bunch of people default on loans. They then lost their house, and the demand for housing cratered along with their value. Because of these changes, the amount of single-family homes being built has never recovered due to housing builders going out of business. It is estimated that right now in 2023, we would need to build 5.5 million housing units in the United States to match the current demand. But we can just build more housing, right? Now, dear viewer, it's time you and I had a chat. See, this video isn't informative. It's actually an intervention, because let's talk about zoning. Now, zoning is how cities and counties classify what can be built on someone's land. Zoning usually specifies the minimum amount of land that can be used to build a home on, but it can also be used to describe what land is used for. Some zoning mentions dense housing, others commercial business. The list goes on. Examples are 1 house per acre, 1 house per 7,500 feet, etc. The reason housing is not being built is because the people who live in individual counties routinely reject requests to change the zoning and allow for more dense living situations like apartment complexes. If you live in a suburban part of town, this image might feel a little bit familiar to you. It's got a nice atmosphere to it. It's great for kids, and it's ruining the chance that you will ever buy a house in an area that's just like this. Let's say we have 5,000 people that are moving to this area of Seattle, and they want to have housing. Now, what type of housing do you need to build? Well, it depends. What are you trying to build? If we wanted to build 1 house for all 5,000 new residents, assuming 2 to 3 residents per house, we would need approximately 416 acres of land for this. That's about half the size of Central Park and almost the entire size of the country of Monaco. If you instead decided to use a more dense type of housing like apartments, you would only need 40 acres of land. So you could house the same people in 1/10 of the land. If you constructed the apartments using only 40 of the 416 acres and then took the remaining 376 acres and built houses, you would build almost 10,000 units of housing. This is enough to have both housings for both type of people, some that are ready to settle down and some that just want stable rent and minimal liabilities. There's also a possibility to remove about 500 houses and create zones for grocery stores, restaurants, and other amenities to provide for a local economy. The idea isn't that suburban neighborhoods need to be abolished, but that having sparse housing without adequate dense housing is the problem. But people are feverishly against this, no matter what the political ideology of the region or county. In Democratic Jennings, Missouri, a large majority of the plots of land are single families that require a minimum of 7,500 square foot per home. This would be good for a rural community, but this is right next to St. Louis, where you need more dense housing to benefit the people that are trying to find a place to live after getting jobs in the area. Compare this to Republican Cody, Wyoming. Housing zones are a bit better here. There's more dense housing allowed, but there's still a lot of single-family zoning. This contributes to the unaffordable housing that's going on. The average person in this town makes $42,000 a year, and the average housing prices are way out of reach at $470,000. To buy the average house, you would need to make 3 times the normal salary of Cody, Wyoming, just to live there. This is the main problem with housing. While there are other items we will get to, like rental houses and attitudes around housing, we simply cannot make enough housing. I mean, it's an easy thing to understand if you have the perspective that you have a limited amount of land and you are using zoning that requires sparse housing. Is it any surprise that with sparsity being required, that the demand causes prices to be sky high? Oh yeah, and there's another problem. There has been a huge explosion of interest in rental houses. It's one of the most popular investments because of how profitable it is. First, you own an appreciating asset. Second, a renter pays off your mortgage while you retain ownership of the home, making it one of the safest investments over the past 50 years, unless there's a significant decline in property value or an excess of housing. Third, when you're old and 75, you sell the asset at a huge profit. Oftentimes, the house will have more than doubled in value, and the renters paid for the value that you have. And because people need houses that are in the short supply, it's a reliable investment because there's usually someone who wants to buy it due to the increase in demand for the almost unchanging supply. I will also not deny that large investment firms like BlackRock are increasing their share of rental homes, but a majority of rental homes are owned by everyday people. Now, these investment firms will likely become way more of a problem and are not helping the issue in any way, but I just wanted to make sure the record was straight on who owns more. And while these are great investments, rental properties only help drive up housing prices by decreasing supply, inflating home values, and pushing more people into homelessness. This is happening because treating a commodity like housing as an investment vehicle is incredibly dangerous because the owner views their community not as, a community, but something that should increase in value. It creates this toxic mindset that we need scarcity because it increases the value of my asset. This is what causes people to not want apartment buildings to be built. Not because they will harm the community, but because they harm the property values. A quick side note, there are a lot of videos that claim that housing prices are about to crash due to rising interest rates. This is true. Interest rates cause housing prices to go down, but that is because the interest rates make the monthly payment a lot more expensive. 8% doesn't sound like a lot, but when the loan is $500,000, you're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest payments over the course of the mortgage. The fact is, these videos often simply leave out that rising interest rates are making houses just as unaffordable, even if the sticker price is lower. And it's simply naive to believe that when rates become more affordable, that the prices will magically stay low. To demonstrate this, a house that is $500,000 at today's rates of 8% has the same required monthly payment of a house that is $1 million with 2% rates of 2021. So while the sticker price is going down by around 10%, they will not stay that way. And I hate seeing people use bad economics to clickbait people into believing something that is just not going to happen. A market crash very well could happen, but affordable housing will not happen due to 8% mortgage rates. So, what does all of this mean? Number one, the American worker is not being compensated fairly for their production. This means they're forced to turn to things like inflation of housing prices to find stability in their future. Number 2, to protect their housing investments and due to the fear of change, communities reject adding dense housing to their cities because increasing supply hurts the demand for their property. Number 3, while these issues have roots in politics, the cause is very apolitical. Rural Republican communities often do not encounter this issue because there is plenty of land to develop on. Urban Democratic communities are actually faced with this issue due to the dense regions that they often occupy, but both would likely tackle this issue the exact same. This is because, and this is important, at its core, the reason Americans won't allow these changes is because of their financial insecurity. Without these high housing prices, most Americans feel that they do not have another financial vehicle that will keep them secure because of the stagnation of American wages and safety nets. Number 4, this would also hurt people who are heavily invested in rental homes, as these people are relying on their houses maintaining their previous value in order to provide their entire income or subsidize a large part of it. All of this creates a divide in the country, not by political affiliation, but by those who have and those who do not. If you do not have permanent housing, you actively want change so you can participate in the American dream. However, if you already own a home, continuing this inefficient system is often some people's only way of feeling financially secure in their future, and pushing away fears that their current home value could fall significantly. Until Americans are able to find financial security in their jobs and better retirement safety nets are established, it's likely that this crisis will continue long into the future.